Hi everyone, this is David from Hotspot. Today we are here joined by Chris Greeley, head of LoL Esports, ahead of the World's Finals here in Chengdu before KT and T1 will face off, I guess. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
I kind of wanted to first talk about 2025 as a season, like esports season. What was like the biggest takeaways from the three split structure being applied to all regional leagues? And did the 3 season split achieve what you guys set in terms of goals?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway was we maybe in places tried to get a little bit too cute with our formats. I think some actually landed really well. Like I thought the LCK format this year was fantastic, from the LCK Cup into the combined split. I spent a lot of time talking to the teams in the LEC and the LTA about the way their formats landed, and the pro player and fan feedback we saw. Really happy, I think, with where they landed for next year. So overall, I think we're happy with the 3 split structure. It allowed us to open up a third international event with First Stand, which we're continuing to iterate on. I think I thought the competition was good across all 3 splits. I thought it gave us great stories. It was great to see some teams peak early, some teams come back late in the season. Like I thought it gave us kind of another story beat with a third international event. So overall, I think we're feeling good about the way it landed.
Obviously, as first time being, I guess, the new tournament and being the first time, what were potentially some of the challenges you guys faced while setting up and designing the whole tournament? Yep. Obviously, there's a couple of news that have come out about first time going to Brazil next year and having more teams. What were some of the learnings that you guys picked up this year?
Yeah, I mean, we started off with this design of like, all right, we're going to have every region send 1 team to First Stand, 2 teams to MSI, and 3 teams to World. And on a whiteboard, it's like a very pretty narrative arc for us. And as we got into it and we were experiencing First Stand, we realized that like fans don't actually care about our pretty narrative arc. They just want a good event. I think it was hard to have a great event with only 5 teams and only a week. I really enjoyed First Stand. I thought there were some great stories. I thought the Oyster story, no one expected, right? And seeing their performance was awesome. I think they picked up a lot of fans. I thought, KC sort of falling off and then the resurgence, and was such a good story for both that fan base and the region with Kalist. So I thought there was a lot of good stuff there, but it's scary to put out a new event, right? Fans have such high expectations for our competitions, and you really don't want to get it wrong. So we took a lot of feedback from it, including from LCK fans who were like, "Hey, this was kind of boring to watch because our team was too good," and went back to the drawing board to figure out, all right, how do we don't want it to feel like a bad version of MSI, so how do we create this event that it feels like its own thing, can stand on its own, but is still really entertaining for fans to watch, and still feels like something pros want to attend. Because the last thing you want is an event where pros are like, well, why would I want to? I don't want to travel for this thing. Like I'd rather not win. So I think we have got a bunch of I think good developments for First Stand for next year in Brazil, and we're just going to keep iterating on it and listening to fan feedback and seeing what feels good and what doesn't, so that ultimately we can get it into a good spot. I don't think 2026 is First Stand's final form, but I do think it'll be a good step on the road to figuring out what that final form looks like.
There are 2 things I wanted to talk about First Stand. So the first one is that it gave me this year as both as working as media, but also like as a fan, there was like the scheduling issue that was a little bit too narrow. Some of the leagues struggle because they had to basically rush right after. And then obviously the second thing is about the regions. So obviously we have 8 teams next year. Are there plans to have to give 2 slots, instead of giving them to just the LPL and the SK? Other considerations being made as to where will other leagues potentially get more slots?
Yeah, we've thought about a lot of. I'll start with the second question first, if that's all right. So we've talked about a lot of ways that those slots could ultimately get handed out. I think no matter, we looked at a couple of different things, right? It was the top 2 performing teams at Worlds, who won other international events. Like every metric we had, we looked at it and we're like, well, it's just the LCK and LPL. So let's not lock ourselves into a metric. Let's see how this feels, right? If it feels good with 8 teams and 2 from, 2 different regions, we can kind of figure out what the qualification looks like. And if we do it and we realize this didn't work or it wasn't fun, we kind of don't have to worry about it because we're just going to iterate again. So we're gonna jump in, see how it feels this year. Hopefully good, but I guess we'll see. The scheduling thing is like, I think it was a tough transition for us to go from 2 splits to 3 splits. We spent a lot of time talking to the regions about their formats and trying to get them to a place where it didn't feel like we were just taking the old format and trying to run it faster 3 times. And some of that, like I said, with Korea worked really well. Some of it in other places we tried to be experimental and didn't like the way it felt. So I think next year it's still a tight schedule. Going from splits into international events and back, we still try to carve out a little bit of space for EWC. There's some other third-party events you'll see in the calendar next year towards the end, and we have Asian Games next year, which is what I was referring to. Plus, we have there's always Demacia Cup and some of the things that come out from sponsors. Red Bull always throws a great event in the off season. We had the Asian Invitational this year that I think we're going to look to run back next year as well. We're still talking through that, so I think it's always going to be a packed calendar. It's just a matter of figuring out some of those scheduling and logistics pieces.
You mentioned Asia Invitational. That was kind of a question after. I'm going to bring it back now. I'm going to bring it now. Obviously, we saw that it turned out to be very interesting.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of, let's say, special matchups, but also unconventional matchups. And also, obviously, the formatting was super great, the grasshopper and stuff like that really stood out for me. Are there plans, I guess, to bring more cross-regional competitions in the future, maybe that are kind of closer to the Asian Invitational, but they include other regions as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think we started talking about what turned into the Asian Invitational during First Stand this year. When we sat down as a leadership team to figure out where we wanted things to go, and it was this idea that you have teams in every region who go to every international event or almost every international event, and then you've got a group of teams in the middle who are trying and who sort of haven't cracked through, or they crack through and then they don't make it back the next year. So we have all these team brands and all of these players' stories that we're just not getting to see. And what would it look like if we were able to do that? And we had this concept of a tournament that was just everybody who didn't make it to Worlds. So as a proof of concept, we ran it this year with teams from the LCK, LPL, and LCP. We do have, we'd love for it to be bigger. We'd love to include all regions. It was a third-party run tournament this year, so there are some hurdles there. But whether it's expanding that tournament or figuring out something where we can bring in the other regions, I think it would be a great opportunity for those teams and players. And I loved watching the Asian Invitational, and I thought it was super entertaining. You get to see a lot of matchups you would otherwise never see. And that stuff pays dividends in the long term, right? If those teams improve and wind up on a world stage, you now have storylines that can go back. Remember when these two played at Asian Invitational 3 years ago? Now look at them; they're on a world stage playing against each other. That's really rich storytelling for us. So we'd love to continue to foster those kind of opportunities.
Got you. Speaking of regional leagues and regions as a whole, obviously we saw the 2025 season come up with LCP and LTA. And basically the whole concept of bringing more guest slots and teams from similar to how I would assume the Valorant model does, which brings teams from Ascension into the Tier 1 competition. How do you see the system for League evolve over the years? Because obviously there's always been the talks of franchising being involved, that being a big factor in how the whole ecosystem is set. Is Riot's vision planning on bringing more, making the Tier 1 competition more open, or having a more, let's say, open participation framework in that sense?
I don't think we want to move too far from where we are now. I think the split one in the LEC next year will be like sort of an interesting test of what the competition looks like, how fans react to it. I know there's been some pushback from fans and from LEC teams. As we've had those conversations. So we don't want to dive in too far too fast. I think it's an interesting model in the LCS and CB LoL where we have those promotion and relegation slots back, but we spent a lot of time talking to those team owners to make sure that they still understand that they're valued partners and we want to treat them that way. So it's a little bit different in every region. I think access to competition is a good thing. I think it's one of the, tier 2 is a problem we haven't fully figured out. It's like still very much a developing area. This is one way that I think tier 2 sort of gets a boost. The ERL system in EMEA is just so good, and those rivalries are deep, and the competition's really exciting. But we haven't been able to manufacture that in North America. So I think promotion relegation there gives us some opportunities we otherwise wouldn't have to continue to keep teams interested and invested in the tier 2 system. But at the end of the day, there has to be some payoff for them. There's not a lot of sponsor money that flows into tier 2. We're not providing subsidies at that level either. So we have to figure out something, a model at that level that feels more sustainable long term. So people don't feel like they just have to come in and take a bet on like, oh, I hope we have a good year and we can make it to the LCS because then we'll be okay. But if we don't, then what? That's not sustainable either.
Gotcha. Moving on to Fearless Draft, obviously we saw that it's been confirmed that it's coming back next year. Obviously, community response has been overwhelmingly positive, I think. I wanted to ask you two things. First one, if you guys had the chance to talk to teams and players, and if you were able to share with us what their feedback was on the format. And then do you see more like an evolution of that Fearless Draft? Because like during this year, some content creators, including Les, has been talking about the Ironman format. I don't know if you have ever heard of it.
Yep.
Like, what do you think? Do you think that could be potentially another thing that will be brought in, I don't know, experimentally or not in the near future?
Yeah. Feedback from pros and teams was good. If it wasn't, and these were the conversations we were having back in like split one.
Okay.
If the feedback wasn't overwhelmingly positive, we wouldn't have kept it for the whole year. Because at the beginning of the year, we made a promise to teams that this was one split, one international event, and then we would see how it went maybe at some point in the future. So to go back on that really required a lot. And teams, for the most part, really enjoyed it. We went and we talked to teams, we talked to pro players. I think the only real complaint we had from some teams was we didn't build a roster based on Fearless, right? So we may have taken a player who has a shallower champion pool, knowing that we just wouldn't be very good in split one, and we were okay with that. But now it's the full year, and like there's only so much you can do about that. I think overwhelmingly the community wanted it.
Yes.
Pro players enjoyed it. I think they got the opportunity to be more creative. I don't know if we would have seen Game 5 Mundo without Fearless, right? And like all the great memes that's brought up. So that stuff's all been great. We've definitely seen the conversations on adjustments to Fearless. I don't love Iron Man for a best of 5. I actually think it's super interesting for a best of 3 because it puts a best of 3 in the same position that you'd have in a best of 5. Feedback from teams and pros hasn't been overwhelming about that. I think it creates a lot of constraints. So we're focused on a couple other minor changes, not to Fearless, but like overall, that we're going to see if we can roll out in time for the season, and we would talk about those at season start. I think we'll go back to experimenting with Fearless back in tier 2 the same way we did originally to get Fearless up and running. We did try a lot of different variations in tier 2 and wound up sort of landing on the ones that felt best and we had the best reactions to. So now that we have this, I think Fearless is awesome. The last thing we want to do is screw it up by trying to like over-engineer it. But yeah, we're gonna keep looking at it. We want everything to feel competitive, but also be entertaining at the end of the day. So if we can make some adjustments and continue to develop it, we're certainly going to.
That was lovely. I would say like a lovely answer.
Yeah.
Switching gears to the, I guess, business financial side of things.
Sure.
Obviously, the global revenue pool, the GRP, was introduced this year. Um, I know you cannot go into details, but like, can you share us anything about the early results that you saw from this year? Any like, what was the impact like for both teams but also players this year?
Yeah, so we've got, we're on track to hit the forecast that we shared with teams at the beginning of the year. It's funny because people were asking this question at MSI, and I was like, well, we only sold one skin so far because it was just the first stand skin at that point. We're really heavily like sort of backloaded. Hall of Legends, World Winner skins, all the world stuff. So all of the results we've seen so far have been really positive. I think it's a good incentive for us too to continue to innovate around the kind of things that we're attaching to esports and asking fans to buy. Because at the end of the day, it's sort of in the olden days, right, pre-global revenue pool, it was like, all right, we're going to do an icon, we're going to do an emote, we'll do a skin for each event, and we'll do world winner skins, and like that should be enough. Like fans can express their fandom that way. But now that it's tied more directly to the economic impact on the teams, we are spending a lot more time on how do we innovate in the future to make sure that the things we're putting out are really interesting to fans. I think the team designed emotes last year and this year are a good example of that, of places where we said, all right, how do we get the teams more involved in the process? We're working on a bunch of stuff for the future, trying to find things that are compelling for fans, feel really good for teams, and like hopefully can continue to add to the revenue pool overall.
I wanted to also touch upon like revenue diversification because obviously we saw that live experience, live events like the T1 Home Round and LEC road trips this year were incredibly successful.
Yeah.
Do you think that having like localized events or like even other like show matches and stuff like that being a potential way of having more revenue diversification for both teams, but also I would guess Riot Games?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just messing with you. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for teams to get out, like home grounds, road shows, build fandom, sell merchandise, get fans in the building, be able to attach sponsors to it. Like I think that's been a great opportunity. We definitely want to continue to do that stuff. It used to be really hard for teams to run even third-party events, right? If they wanted to, we used to have very strict rules on like, all right, if you want to do an event with a sponsor, you can't have another professional team there, or you have to do mixed teams, or you have to play with fans. Like, we didn't want to replicate the things we were doing in competition at third-party events. We've moved really far away from that at this point. I think we've been really encouraging to the teams of like, if you want to do something cool, like let us know what it is and how we can help, and let's figure out ways that we can deliver more to fans. Because ultimately, if you're restricting a team's ability to have like a show match in the off season, like sure you're hurting the team, but you're also hurting fans, right? Because they don't have that opportunity. So we're trying to find a lot more ways that we can open that stuff up. I think it's great for everybody involved. Like the road shows and the home grounds are like a complete win across the board. It's good for the teams that are running it and the revenue that they can generate. I think it's good for Riot because we now have essentially a production partner who's shouldering a lot of the work for us, and it's good for fans who get a show delivered to them in a place and at a time where they otherwise wouldn't have been able to have a live experience, connect with other fans, and be able to connect with the pros and teams.
Okay, perfect. How does like I guess obviously it's been 15 years of League of Legends esports. What are like the key goals for the upcoming? I wouldn't say 15 years, probably a little bit too much, but like next 3 to 5 years in terms of like what are we trying to achieve? Where are we moving? In what direction are we moving towards to?
Yeah, I think the home grounds and road trips are a really good example of like our two big goals. Like we want to meet more fans where they are. We want to do more stuff on the road. We want to do more stuff, big or small, where fans can interact with each other, fans can interact with teams and pros. Right now, if you're an LCS fan, and you don't want to travel to LA, you don't get to see any regular season LCS matches, and there's just one road show. So we want to find ways to change that stuff and get out there more. And then the flip side of that is we have currently 60 teams, 59 teams across the world. Some of them are making money, a lot of them aren't, and we want a sustainable ecosystem. We want those teams, if they're making good commercial decisions, right? Like they're doing good business, they should be making money. We want to continue to support them to open up those revenue streams so that they can not only be profitable, but find more ways that they can connect their team and their players with fans as well.
Perfect. Last two questions. The first one is obviously it was announced that Worlds will be going to North America next year, Texas and NYC. What was the rationale behind choosing two cities as the hosting venues at the event? Because obviously usually we're used to having at least three of them. We had them three this year in China. We had them three last year in Europe. And then I think we had four of them in Worlds 2022.
We did have four in Worlds 2022.
So what was like the decision behind that as well?
Yeah, so the alternative would have been LA to Texas to New York. And in LA, we would have been in the Riot Games Arena and played on campus at Riot for all of play-ins in Swiss, which is what we did when we were in Europe. That was Berlin wound up being the first city. We saw a lot of feedback from fans that it made Swiss feel too small. I think Swiss felt great this year. In Beijing, we had 1,500 people in the JDG Arena. I think we want to continue to find ways where we can to have more fans in the building. Swiss to me is one of the most exciting parts of Worlds, and we want to get as many people in as we can to watch it. So we had the opportunity in Texas to extend that show in a way that sort of worked within our logistics and our budget. So rather than having three cities for the sake of having three cities and doing a smaller show for Swiss, we decided to move everything into Texas and then our finals in New York. But in 27, we're still aiming. It's same model as this year, back to three cities. But we wanted to prioritize next year, making sure that we just had Swiss in a bigger venue.
Gotcha. Is there any player that stood out for you a lot this World? If you had to think about one. I'll give you a tricky question.
Yeah, no. I think Gumi has been amazing. I think he's carried a lot of the matches pretty hard. It's really hard to ignore Faker. He's just so good. So I think those have been the standouts for me on T1. Like BDD and watching him play throughout quarters and semis has been really exciting too. So. I don't know, man. I'm so curious as to how today is going to go, and really looking forward to seeing it all resolve.
Perfect. Thank you a lot, Chris. I guess it was wonderful talking to you.
Thanks, man.
And hopefully we'll get each other another chance soon.
I hope so. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.